What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another edition of On the Record presented by CalledIt. I'm Danny Burke, your host, and joining me for today's edition on this Monday, we have Dane Martinez and Maya Campion back in the mix, and we have plenty to discuss on today's slate. We have a big World Cup match to look forward to tomorrow, Spain and France. Unbelievable matchup in store for us. We will do a deep dive into that game. We will tell you the daily call that revolves around that match, and we will pick the brains of Dane and Maya and see if they agree with the daily call and part of our challenge that we label as the run, where we look to flip $250. That's singular investment. Roll it on over, and the goal is to ideally get it all the way 12 times over to $1 million. Now, the furthest that we've made it has been trade number 7. So we are back on trade number 1, and that is going to be the first discussion of today's program. Following that, considering that we have just the final 4 remaining of the World Cup, we are going to get the power rankings of these 4 nations from both Dane and Maya. How do they rank it, from 4th being the lowest? First, obviously, being at the top. What do they think about that? And then taking kind of a look back at the entirety of the World Cup, which nation in hindsight was the biggest disappointment? I'm sure that'll ruffle some feathers, but hey, we don't mind doing that from time to time here on the record. So that is what we have to look forward to for about the next half hour. And folks, if you want more content, we implore you to check out the website, www.calledit.media. All you got to do is put in your email and you get the newsletter that gives you multiple breakdowns of the top trades of the day. It also gives you the daily call and an update on our challenge that we just talked about, the run, where we're looking to put 250 into $1 million. And then you're able to also voice your opinion, whether or not you agree with the call, see how you stack up amongst the rest of the community, and compete against everybody on that leaderboard. So tons of great things happening. A lot of excitement that we will be discussing with these guests, and one of them being Maya Campion, Maya.pitchside, where you can follow her on Instagram. As we always like to joke, where in the world is Maya Campion? Maya, you are in Croatia now, is that correct?
Exactly. As of today, I am in Croatia. You know, I have to do something to fill my time after I left the US. So traveling is the way to go. I'll be back in the UK next week, hopefully watching England compete in the final.
Yeah, oh my goodness. That would be absolute mayhem if that comes to fruition. So, folks, make sure you follow Maya. She's putting out some great content, and especially if that does happen, you know it's going to be rowdy there. So, can't wait to see the result of their match happening in a couple days with Argentina and England. And I know another guy who's excited for all the action is our man, Dane Martinez at Spittin' Speeds, where you can catch him on X. Dane, how we doing out on the East Coast of the U.S.?
We're doing good. It is sweltery right here, so I wonder what kind of weather we are going to get for that final on Sunday, but we're doing good, deep in the throes of summer. I'm a little bit kind of, nostalgic here. We've only got 3 or 4 games left. This has been an incredible tournament, and if you've been following us here on the run, you've certainly had fun agreeing or disagreeing with our calls.
No question about it. It has been an absolute blast. And yeah, it's a bittersweet kind of moment, right? I mean, it's the thrill of the best teams going up against each other, the top nations now, but we don't want it to end. It's always how it happens when you make it to the end of these tournaments, but got to make the most of it while we can. And that is what we're looking to do with the daily call and the match for tomorrow, which, of course, folks, is France and Spain. So that's occurring at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Kind of odd for us, obviously, here in the States for a major matchup to be happening in the middle of the afternoon, but obviously got to pertain to everybody around the world. 3 p.m. Eastern time, AT&T Stadium, aka Jerry World, down there in Arlington, Texas. France and Spain are going to be starting that match, and you can see it, Kalshi, right now. France is the favorite, minus 161 American odds, trading at 59%. Spain, on the flip side, trading at 41%, or coming out to plus 134 American odds. But ladies and gentlemen, as you can see on the right side of the screen, kind of going back to the well with what transpired last week with one of the daily calls, the tie at the first half, that is going to be the daily call from the crew at CalledIt, and trade number 1 of the run, where $250 will be invested upon. So currently it's trading at about 46%, coming out to plus 109. However, the team at Called It believes it should be as high as 49% for the first half to end in a draw, whether it's 0-0, 1-1, 2-2. You get the gist. That's the call. Maya, let's throw it out to you. How do we feel about this daily call with both of these squads to end locked up at the end of the first half?
We like making some risky calls here at Called It, but I like this one quite a bit. I think that semifinals are a completely different animal, you could say, than earlier knockout rounds, and you have to be a little bit conservative as a team. There's so much at stake that often you spend the opening 20, 30 minutes kind of feeling each other out rather than committing those numbers forward, really opening those spaces behind you. And I don't expect them to create, a flurry of clear-cut opportunities right away. Both teams know the conceding first in this World Cup semifinal completely changes the game tactically. And I think, of course, they're going to be very, very aware of that. However, I do agree with the call that France will go through. I think that the numbers there, we can see that they're favoring France, and I'd have to agree with that. But, a tie at halftime, it's very, very likely.
Very, very likely, Dane. That's what we've heard from Maya, and clearly Called It's thinking that way. But do you think that way?
Yeah, listen, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Maya. I'm going to agree with the call. I like this. And I'm going to go a step further. Not only do I think it will be a draw or a tie at the end of the first half at halftime, I think that draw will be 0-0, to kind of echo a lot of what Maya was saying in terms of in these kind of high stakes games, teams playing conservative at the very beginning, right? Be fearful of the big mistake, fearful of going down as opposed to being aggressive. I do think there's kind of a feeling out process. These teams also have a lot of teammates and familiar opponents from their clubs, so they know each other. I think that also lends itself to kind of a low scoring game. And if you look at France also, all 6 of their goals in the knockout stage have come in the second half, right? And Spain, quite frankly, in my opinion, is the best defensive team in the entire tournament. They've only conceded once. So when you put the kind of conservative elements together, the fact that it kind of opens up in the second half for France in the way I think it will, and just quite frankly, how it's tough to score on Spain, I do think it'll be tied at halftime. And quite frankly, I think it'll be 0-0.
Is that how you see it, Maya?
Honestly, let me tell you, as someone who's in this European time zone, it has been so devastating to try and stay awake for the first half of these games and for them to be so boring, and then to think, okay, whatever, I'll just go to sleep. And you wake up and you read that it was like the craziest second half that you've ever seen, and everything happened in the second half, So I completely agree. I think that a tie, both teams playing conservative in the first half, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and Dane, I think you make a great point. That's kind of how I see it as well. And I think when you're betting the tie in the first half, that's what you're kind of envisioning, right? A lower stakes affair there, lower scoring in terms of everybody just taking a step back. Don't be the first team to make the mistake. And that's what you really are expecting to come to fruition. And clearly the team is, you guys are. I'm with you as well. I didn't love last week when they had it in that match, but for the tie at the end of the first half for the last call. But I'm jumping on the bandwagon now. I do like it for this one. Like you kind of said, Maya, like sometimes there's been some crazy trades and we're a little hesitant, but this one, I do see the path here trading at 46% for a little bit of value. Now, I do want to ask one more thing before we move on, Dave, because Maya did say she agreed with where the market's trending. For France to move on, do you feel that same way as well, that they are the rightful favorite and that's where the money will be made?
Yeah, ultimately, I do agree. I think in the entire tournament, France has been the class. I think France is the deserving favorite. Right now, I believe they're at 39% to win the World Cup out there as a trade on Kalshi. And I do think, when we get into the kind of power rankings, I do think France is number one. The interesting part, and I know we're going to talk about it, is I kind of think that, the game on Tuesday is the main event. I kind of think that France is 1, and I think Spain is 2, where I think England and Argentina are kind of 3 and 4 and should kind of be the opening act. I would love it if the games were reversed. I would love it if England, Argentina was the one on Tuesday and France and Spain was the one on Wednesday, because as I look into my power rankings here, Danny, to me, out of the 4, Argentina would still be the 4. It seems like they have had to pull rabbits, out of the hat every single time. They were down 2-0 to Egypt, right? They needed Switzerland to have 10 men at one point. Even the crazy game against, Cape Verde, right? It seems like I don't want to say they've got lucky, but there's been controversy about certain calls, so they have gotten there and they're a great side, but it seems like they've gotten a little bit of help along the way, right? And to me, England will be third. They have also needed to be rescued by Jude and Harry Kane at times. Remember that crazy game against Mexico, right? The comeback against Norway, even the Ivory Coast game when they had to come on back. So I think they've been rescued at times by their absolute studs in Jude and in Kane. And to me, Spain looks like the second best team. I think they are getting better and better. If you remember at the beginning of this tournament, Lamine Yamal was injured, right? And kind of rounding into form. And I think as he has gotten into form, I think Spain has started to look better. And I think they are, like I said, the best defense that is left in this tournament. But to me, France is the class. I think it has looked the easiest for France. I think Mbappe has been absolutely incredible. I think they are deep, which we have started to see. And, I think they are the deserving favorites to not only win tomorrow against Spain, but also ultimately win the World Cup.
And look, this is an option that you could trade on too, right, Dane? Because if you think it's going to come down to the winner of France and Spain, and you think whichever nation wins that has the best opportunity to win the whole dang thing, you could probably just take them in the futures department to get the better price right now, right? Depending on who you like, whether it's France or Spain, plus 355 for Spain, plus 141 for France, because both of those nations will not be that price, regardless of if they're playing against England or Argentina. Is that something that you would recommend for people if they have that same level of conviction?
Yeah, I would say so, because I think about the permutations, right? And again, I think the main event of the semis is the game on tomorrow. And I think, to be quite honest, whoever wins that game will ultimately be the favorite on Sunday. Maybe as you look at the Kalshi markets right now, Spain and England are really, really close, but I think Spain would be a small favorite against England if they get on through, and that was the matchup on Sunday. But yes, I think whoever wins on Tuesday will be the favorite, right, with their toughest test happening tomorrow. So to your point, Danny, the idea of getting ahead of it to get the extra value, I think would be a smart trade.
Maya, do you kind of agree with that? It's the pseudo championship match there with France and Spain.
Yes, I think so. Like logistically, if I'm gonna rank them, I would put Spain above England in terms of talent quality. However, I believe that France will beat Spain, therefore Spain is my third. So Argentina, I agree with Dane. I think we're both putting Argentina fourth. They've had some very, very shaky games and some questionable decisions. So they'd have to be fourth. And I think that, like Dane said, if Spain were to play England, if that was the matchup, it would be very, very interesting. And I think that would be a much harder game for England than Argentina. I mean, I don't want to say anything too early, and jinx it. We don't have a good record with semifinals, but I think that we'll beat Argentina, and then the Spain-France game, I think France will, in the end, overcome Spain.
See, we're talking about power rankings here, and one of us has to stray off the beaten path, and I guess it'll be me, guys. And I agree with you in terms of France and Spain, but I'm putting Argentina over England. You guys are going to doubt the GOAT here, Messi. I'm putting Argentina at the 3 slot. Now, I get it. Everything has looked ugly. People are murmuring about what kind of benefits they're getting here and there. But right when they count you out, right when they think they're going to dip out, they pull you back in, right? Like we like to say, right when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. That's Argentina here. And while it looks ugly, they're still finding a way. And, they're clearly not the same dominance of what we saw in the last World Cup. But think about that narrative. If we got that rematch with France and Argentina, think about that storyline would be incredible. Now, obviously, that's not a reason why they'd win. I'm just kind of making that up in my mind why it would be a better argument too. But Argentina just knows how to win. Like they're finding a way. They're kind of playing down to the competition, so to speak, but they're still finding a way because they have that championship veteran experience. And while it doesn't look sexy, it doesn't matter if the result benefits them, Maya. So that's why I have them over England right now. Yeah. I still give Messi the benefit.
I mean, I would hate to be an Argentinian fan because it must just be so frustrating. Why are you waiting until the 75th minute to actually create something, to show the quality? Why are you, making people like shake at home for the first 65 minutes while you're 2-0 down to Egypt. I mean, it's absurd. Like Cabo Verde was a shaky game. That game against Egypt, I thought, okay, it's done. It's done. And then they just decide at one point, all right, we'll start playing now. Yeah, now's the time, we'll actually try. And they managed to make it time and time again. It's not going to be a comfortable game for England at all. I think that England, they've shown throughout the tournament that they know how to manage these knockout games, but they also haven't been very consistent. I think Ghana was a very tough game for them. Panama was also tough, but I think that they have the quality and composure. And hopefully through, watching these last Argentinian games, they're able to understand, okay, the last 25 minutes, structure, composure, that's going to be so important.
Dane, anything you want to add on to that?
No, I mean, I think that's the right approach here, especially as it relates to Argentina, right? They have been able so far to, pull the rabbit out of the hat, to flip the switch, as it were, right, Danny? But, doing that against Egypt, doing that against Cape Verde is a lot different than banking on them to do it 2 more times against teams the likes of Egypt and either Spain or France, right? So I think the kind of glass slipper, the kind of positive mojo has the kind of rely on Messi has gotten them this far, but I don't know that it's the smart trade to go ahead and think that they're going to do it again, not once, but twice to ultimately win the World Cup.
And another thing I think that's quite important is that, as you said, there's been a huge microscope over the decisions that are made in favor of Argentina. And, I'm not a referee, but as a referee, that will always be in the back of my head, that I won't want anyone pointing fingers at me saying that I'm colluding or, that. So I think that's also a question, because that's a huge thing at the moment, that a lot of people are saying, what the hell is going on here? And I'm not into conspiracies very much, but I think that it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, very true. Hey, maybe they're embracing the villain role now, and they'll use that to their advantage. But yeah, either way, not a lot of fans being made outside of Argentina for Messi and company. But I'll take it here. I'll be the team to put them number 3, or the guy to put that team number 3. That's me. I'll wear it. We'll see what happens when it comes to Wednesday's match. But either way, a fun Final Four and a fun power ranking with some of the top nations remaining in the World Cup, which then leads us to our final discussion here, guys. Among all the nations who competed in the World Cup, now we may or may not ruffle some feathers here, but who was the biggest disappointment? Whether it was gameplay, whether it was lack of fans showing up, however you want to label it, completely up to you guys. Dane, I'll ask you first. Which nation was the biggest disappointment throughout this entire World Cup?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say the USA. I'm going to say the United States of America because of a few reasons. One, there was so much buzz, right, heading into this. Could they finally go further than ever before, right? And in the group stage, it sort of looked that way. They looked like a different team. People were saying this is the best American side we have seen in decades, that there are finally world-class players that play in the heights of Europe on this squad. And there was kind of positive feeling. There was a buzz that we could go further, take advantage of the host status and all of that, right? And then where we wind up? Round of 16, just like always, it was no different. And we go out to Belgium. Not only that we went out in the round of 16, but the way we went out in that game, completely letting go of the rope, in my opinion, losing 4-1. And then the other reason I would say the U.S. is, Maya made the point of some of the conspiracy, the controversy, all of that stuff, right? Again, here in the States, there was so much positive feeling around the World Cup, not only Team USA, but the World Cup in general, right? And some of the scenes we were seeing, whether it be fan bases coming in, whether it be the European tourists talking about ranch dressing and Waffle House and free refills and all that stuff. And then that kind of got overshadowed with the Flo Balogun controversy and the suspension of the suspension and the interjection of Trump. And it kind of, I don't want to say completely put a stain on it all, but now instead of all the positive feelings around the event, around the progress, and around the team. When you talk about Team USA, the way they went out and the kind of, conspiracy stuff, like Maya was saying, how people are like not loving the US, it kind of did a 180. And to me, they were on the ascendancy in terms of image and skill. And then to me, a big time disappointment is that they went out early, they went out the way they did, and there's kind of controversy attached to it. So to me, it was a missed opportunity for Team USA. And to me, that was the biggest disappointment.
Maya?
I think that, what Dane's talking about is a very, very important discussion. It's really, really interesting. All I can say is that I had nothing but really positive experiences when I was in the US. And I think that decision, we spoke about last week with Trump getting involved, it did kind of taint that. But I think the general consensus of people going to travel there it was very well organized, that people were very hospitable. And unfortunately, it's not the people who are calling up Infantino. Do you know what I mean? Like, we are fully aware here that there are people who disagree and agree with those decisions, and it's not everyone. But I also think that it's positive that there's a lot that I think all hosting nations, but specifically the US, can take out of the experience as well of hosting so much diversity and hosting people from so many different countries, and really having positive experiences with all these different countries throughout it is going to be so valuable moving forward, because I think that it was dealt with very positively. So I think that it's unfortunate that decision was made, but I think the overall, we can say it was a success.
I think it was more like that was the undisputed headline at first.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And now it's not, now it's kind of battling for airtime with this other piece of it. And not only kind of feeling of, the culture and the joy and all that, but then also, Maya, the team itself. There was such positive feelings about the potential of this team. Did anyone think they were going to win the World Cup? Probably not. But a lot of people did, in fact, I think Kalshi, the trades were even saying, the favorites, that they could get past the round of 16. They could get to a quarterfinals. And then who knew, right? And then not only that they did, in fact, lose, but the way they lost that game a week ago, I think maybe Stain is a little too far in the same way, maybe a little too far with this other piece we're talking about. And it since comes out that I think Pulisic has like a hairline fracture in his leg, and so maybe there are some reasons, right? But it just went from the headline being all positivity to something a little different.
I think for me, it's Brazil for the opposite reason, that I think that the US, you start at a certain standard and you expect more. And I think that I said on a show a while ago that Brazil have the highest chance of like imploding just because of who they are as a nation and what the expectation is. And I think that that's what we saw. I mean, it isn't about them losing to a bad team, because I think Norway earned their place, but it's about expectations versus reality. And I think they did enter the tournament as one of the favorites, and they had an incredible attacking talent and a squad that many believed was capable of going all the way. And they never consistently found that top form. And of course, you could honorable mention to Germany. They didn't carry those same expectations as Brazil. But, the team they put forward, we knew it wasn't one of the strongest German teams. But for Germany to lose on penalties is so ironic, because the Germans, they don't miss their penalties. And I think that going out to Paraguay in the round of 32 was like a surprisingly early exit. But still, for Brazilians, I mean, the benchmark is like the semis, I think. For them to be knocked out, it's so disappointing.
Yeah, it's funny how you said honorable mention Germany, because I was going to say that verbatim, because I agree with Dane that for me, it's the United States. And it's kind of funny that you would, like us being here in the US, would throw our nation there, but it's because you entered, and Dane put it perfectly, but just to add a little bit more, it's just, you entered with a certain type of sentiment, and it kept getting built up
Mm,
and built up from, again, the camaraderie that everybody was feeling so hospitable coming here, the team looking good. And it would have been one thing to lose that game against Belgium, but it's the manner in which how they lost was so pathetic.
mm.
I mean, defensively was just an absolute nightmare. You can respect a team losing if it's hard fought. There was no semblance of that or competency whatsoever. It was an absolute embarrassment on the biggest stage after all the controversy. It couldn't have went any worse. And now it's back to square one where it's, well, if the US really invests from a young age in their nation in the World Cup, they'll be it's the same conversation every single time. And it felt like they finally got over the hump. And it seems like, nope, they actually just took one step forward, but 10 steps backwards after all the progress they made. So, Dane, I think you put it perfectly.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and I guess when you talk about disappointment, right? I've always said to people, disappointment is a function of expectation. So could it really be that kind of disappointment when they obviously, like Maya said with Brazil, they're expected to be the semis. Maybe Team USA was expected to go out in the round of 16 or maybe the quarters. And so they kind of finished around where their ranking, their skill level, their talent is supposed to. But I think because it was such this era of good feelings and because of the way they looked at the group stage, everybody was saying this could be different, and it wound up being the exact same as always.
Yeah. Same old song and dance, Maya.
Yeah, I can tell you as an England fan, it's the hope that kills you. So try not to hope too much and set your expectations low and be pleasantly surprised for the next World Cup. That's my advice for you.
Yeah, that's usually my MO as a Chicago sports fan here. So
There
I'm
you
very
go.
well adjusted to that, but still I fall into the trap. I get teased a little bit. It happened with the United States, and that's why Dana and I are not too happy with how that transpired at the end. So still, an interesting conversation to have. I'm sure a lot of people would have different answers, but yeah, Germany, Brazil, also very good looks for the biggest disappointment in the World Cup based on where you set those expectations. But guys, before we head out here, I do want to get your expectations for the following game because we teased it a little bit, and I'm assuming where you're heading here based on how we did our power rankings. But obviously, I just got to ask based on where it's trading. England and Argentina, this is where it's at right now at Kalshi, 54% for England to advance, Argentina 46%. Now, I know, again, you both have England in the power rankings, but based on the price, Dane, is this what you would trade on England right now at that, or would you be looking at an alternative way to trade in this market?
Yeah, so, to me, 54-46 is not any kind of huge difference, right? We're talking about a coin flip. And so the side that I believe, so in this market, yes, I would take England to advance. If I was going to mess around with, get cheeky with it, maybe that same kind of theory that it starts slow and opens up later, right? Looking at an under for the first half, or maybe like a lot of these knockout games have gone already going to extra time. There are markets out there. Will it go to extra time? Will it go to a penalty shootout? And those I think would be worth exploring. But, ultimately, yes, I think England advances. And I think the blueprint is a kind of tight, conservative, slower game at the start that opens up in the second half. And then the clash shows up, whether it's Messi, whether it's Kane, whether it's Jude.
Maya?
Yeah, I'm saying England advance. I'm thinking with my heart, but
Right.
also I think with my head, and I think it's going to be a very, very close, tense game. England, I can't say that they're very successful on penalties, so I'm really hoping it doesn't get to that stage. So I'm hoping that they win it even before extra time. It's very late the games here. Everyone here is just praying it doesn't go into extra time because everyone's got work in the morning. So yeah, I think maybe a one goal difference, but it's gonna be very, very tight.
Nail biter for sure. She is Maya
Yeah.
Campion at Maya.pitchside, where you can follow her on Instagram. For Dane Martinez at Spittin' Speeds on X. Appreciate both of you. Best of luck with all your trades you got going on. And folks, make sure you follow them on the socials because they have fantastic content they are putting out, even outside of everything that we discussed here on the record. So big shout out to them and shout out to everybody tuning in. We appreciate you. Make sure you check out more of our content at www.calledit.media. media. Like we said at the beginning of the show, all you got to do is enter your email, and there you'll have access to the newsletter where you get the full information and breakdown from the crew at Called It for the daily call and the run, our challenge looking to flip 250 into a million. And you can see on the screen we're on trade number 1. That $250 investment is being put on tomorrow's match between France and Spain. First half to end in a tie, trading at 46%. The crew believes it should be at 49%. For more of their reasoning, head to the website, find out why, and also voice your opinion, and let's see how you can stack up amongst everybody else. But that's going to do it for another edition of On the Record. Once again, shout out and appreciate Maya and Dane for giving their thoughts. And folks, we will be back tomorrow, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, except we will have Adam Kaufman and Cormac United, both in the saddle, going head-to-head to get their thoughts on tomorrow's match and plenty more trading markets. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Best of luck with your trades, and we will see you on the record.